For several months in late 2021, I lived in my grandparents' old house. They had passed some time ago, and my family hadn't sold it. It was mostly a vacation spot, but I needed a place to stay between apartments, and it suited me well. I wasn't thrilled about living there. It was a very old, run-down place. Still, free rent was a plus. About 2 months into my stay, I got home from work around 6. After parking in the driveway and walking to the mailbox, a neighbor approached me. She was an older woman I'd spoken with a few times about my grandparents and why I was staying there. During those chats, I'd mentioned I was alone in the house for a while, which is why she stopped me. She recalled me saying just a couple of days prior that I was the only one living there. Earlier that day, while walking, she had seen someone moving inside my house, behind the windows. My car wasn't there, which worried her, as she figured I was at work. I thanked her, but I didn't truly grasp what she was telling me. She didn't seem entirely sure of what she'd seen. And really, it sounded crazy. Who would be inside my grandparents' old house? Once inside, I quickly checked for any signs of a break-in or anything out of place. I found nothing, not even a footprint. It was a strange and unsettling start to my evening, but I tried to believe there was nothing to worry about. I cooked dinner and watched TV in the living room for the rest of the night. It was Friday, so I had the next 2 days off. I must have stayed up past 1 in the morning. By then, I had mostly forgotten what my neighbor said. It felt like any other night, but as it got very late, I turned off the TV and went upstairs. When I'd arrived home earlier, the sun still lit up much of the house, so I hadn't switched on many lights. This meant the whole place was now very dark, in the middle of the night. The only lights I had used were in the bedroom when I changed out of my work clothes. I climbed the creaky wooden stairs to the second floor, walked down the hallway, and into my bedroom. Like the rest of the house, it was very old, but it had 2 parts. There was the sleeping area with a bed, and then a small passage with a closet and an old dressing table built into the wall. Beyond that was a big bathroom with a separate shower, bathtub, and an unsettling number of mirrors. It honestly gave me the creeps. I used the bathroom, turned off its lights, and then went back to the bed area, switching off those lights too. But immediately, I sensed something was wrong. A light was still on. I turned around, and in a second, my heart began to pound. The small hallway connecting the bed and bathroom, where the dressing table was, had a light glowing. To explain why this was so unsettling, it was an old-fashioned bulb hanging from the ceiling, with a thin string you had to pull to switch it on or off. I never used that light. Plus, it was almost impossible to turn it on or off by mistake, since you had to deliberately pull the string. I walked toward the hallway and stared. A hazy blue glow barely shone through the bulb's cloudy glass. That bulb had to be decades old. I carefully reached up and pulled the string. It took a surprising amount of force to click it off. It certainly wouldn't just turn itself on. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became, especially as my neighbor's earlier comment about someone being inside the house came back to me. Looking back, I should have left right then and there, but I think it's easy to convince yourself it's nothing, just a strange accident. What if the light had just turned on by itself? It was ancient. Maybe it was fault. And truly, the chance of someone breaking into this specific old house was so tiny that I felt I needed actual proof to believe it, let alone call the police. Don't get me wrong, a single light being on that I never used was creepy, but it didn't seem like enough to completely panic. I knew I wouldn't sleep well anytime soon. I switched my bedroom lights back on, stayed inside, and closed the door, planning to sit on my phone until I felt tired again. For the next half hour, I kept glancing at the door and the bathroom hallway, filled with a growing fear. Even with all my reasons for doubt, my gut told me something was very wrong. I didn't know what to do. I had already searched the house earlier, but maybe I should check again. I got up and opened the door to the main upstairs hall. The house was strangely silent. I took a few steps to the spare bedroom and opened its door. It still held my grandparents' old bed and furniture, with many boxes piled against the wall. A deeply unsettling feeling came over me in that room. I knew I was supposed to search, but the moment I stepped inside, my body froze. My heart pounded faster and faster, like an alarm screaming inside me to get out. Then I saw something, a shape pushing up under the covers on the bed. As I looked closer, I slowly realized it was a body. Someone was in the bed. Immediate panic hit. I tried to back away but stumbled, making the wooden floorboards creak loudly. Instantly, the person sat up in bed so quickly, he clearly wasn't asleep. He must have been listening to my every move. It was a man. His eyes bored into mine, but that's all I saw before I bolted from the room. His footsteps chased right behind me. I ran until I was out of the house and down the road to my neighbor's door. The same woman I'd spoken to earlier. She let me in and called for help. I was grateful that officers arrived fairly quickly, but the intruder must have fled right away, because he was already gone. In the weeks after, my parents helped check everything they knew was in the house, especially valuables, but nothing was missing. Or if anything was gone, it held no value. This raised the question, why was he there? Many believed he simply knew the house was empty and was living in it without permission. But what truly scares me and makes me doubt that idea is that I had been there for 2 months. He had to know I was there. Could he have been hiding, living alongside me that entire time, without my knowledge? And what if I hadn't found him and escaped? I moved out immediately and haven't returned to that house. I likely never will. I was just returning from visiting family for a few days. I always disliked the 14-hour drive. It was too much to do comfortably in one day, yet not quite long enough to make getting a hotel feel worthwhile, especially if it meant stretching the trip to 2 days. I always pushed myself to do it all at once, which sucked all the fun out of the road trip. I'd left my family's place around 3 in the afternoon, so I was driving through the night. Not a smart choice. By midnight I was exhausted and drowsy. This stretch of road wasn't near any cities. It was just empty forest roads or wide open plains. There were only a few gas stations here and there, and maybe some dirt paths leading to unknown places. I decided to stop for anything that would keep me awake. Coffee, an energy drink, whatever, the moment I got a chance. I soon saw a small gas station off the highway, hidden among the trees. It seemed like a local place. Maybe a small town was behind it, but the trees completely blocked my view. No streetlights even lit the road that continued past the gas station. As I pulled in, I noticed the place looked a bit strange. It wasn't a modern station with a big roof over the pumps. It was just a few pumps out in the open, with no lights. Even the main building didn't seem to have its lights on inside. I would have thought the place was closed, or even abandoned if not for the 3 or 4 other cars parked there. It looked like a classic old gas station on an empty highway, with other customers present, but it wasn't lit up nearly enough. Still, seeing the other cars, I figured it was open. I parked beside them and got out. As I approached the door, I only saw my reflection until I opened it. The moment I did, all 4 or 5 people scattered inside the shop turned as one and stared straight at me. Not just a quick look. They all moved and stared together. Their eyes locked onto me. Their faces were rough and showed no feeling. But that was all I could really take in, because after their sudden stare caught me off guard. I saw it wasn't just incredibly dark. It was also empty. All the shelves were there, but completely bare. Even after seeing that, when I looked back at the men, they were still watching me as if I didn't belong. This whole scene lasted maybe 10 seconds before I slowly backed away, let the door shut, and rushed back to my car. I didn't know what on earth that was, but it felt like I'd stumbled into some strange secret gathering at an abandoned gas station. I pulled away from the store and onto the road. I guess this was just one of those things you try not to overthink. 10 minutes later, I had accepted I'd never know what I'd walked into, and was back to looking for another gas station. Hopefully one that was open and safe this time. The empty road ahead didn't look promising. Another 10 minutes passed when headlights appeared behind me. I was driving fairly fast, perhaps 10 or 15 miles over the limit, with no other cars on the road. This was the first vehicle to come up behind me in hours. Then came another, and possibly several more. I couldn't tell for sure, their lights all blurred into one. They were closing in very fast. I moved to the right lane to let them by. The first car passed, then quickly merged back in front of me. I was already slowing down a little, but I certainly didn't expect them to slam on their brakes. I nearly had a heart attack as I slammed on my own brakes, trying to swerve and avoid a crash. I managed to stop just a few feet from their bumper, my car slightly sideways. That's when it all clicked. This was one of the cars from the gas station. I checked my mirror. Another car stopped right behind me, and a third pulled up beside my driver's door. In seconds, several men got out of their cars and surrounded mine. If it had been daytime, not a lonely road at 1 a.m., with no one else around, I might have tried a safer place. But given the situation, I felt I had no choice but to risk an escape. With cars blocking every path, I steered off the road and into the trees. I didn't get far before grabbing my phone and jumping out. I ran full speed into the forest. It was completely dark, even just 30 feet in. I kept running, hearing the men's footsteps close behind. But as I went deeper, I think they lost sight of me. I sat against a tree and waited, maybe for a whole hour without even turning on my phone. I was afraid one of them might be nearby and see the screen light up. So I just sat, staring into the absolute darkness of the woods, listening to the leaves rustle above me. After that hour, I finally took out my phone and used the map to find my way back to the road, where I could get enough signal to text for help. All the other cars were gone. Only mine remained, still tangled in the trees off the road. After that long night, a tow truck rescued my car, and surprisingly it had almost no damage. There's been no news about who was following me, or why they tried to stop me. I've come to believe the men likely thought I'd seen something at that gas station. I shouldn't have. They followed me to cover their tracks, whether by taking me or getting rid of me and hiding the proof in the quiet forest. The image of me walking into that gas station, and all those men turning to stare, is still seared into my memory. It still scares me to think what might have happened. I'm writing this while the memory is still vivid. It happened just a couple of days ago. I had Tuesday and Wednesday off work this week, just staying home. No plans, simply relaxing and enjoying some quiet time alone. On Tuesday evening I decided to order some food, just to avoid cooking. So I opened a food delivery app, found a random place still open, and ordered a small meal. It said it would take about 45 minutes. I stayed in the living room, watching videos on TV. Up until then, it was a perfectly good night. After about 45 minutes, I casually got up and looked out the window. I'm not sure why, as I could easily check the delivery app. But when I looked, I saw a car parked in my driveway. I quickly opened the app to check the map. The delivery person was still 10 minutes away. So who was in my driveway? I'm not one to confront people, so I wasn't eager to go outside and speak to them. Surely they'd realize they were at the wrong house and leave without me needing to say anything. I went back to the sofa, but kept getting up to check the window every few minutes. When my food arrived, the car was still in the driveway. From my window I couldn't see much inside it. So when I answered the door, I asked the delivery driver if he'd seen anyone in the car. He replied, "Yeah, just a guy in the driver's seat," but I didn't really get a good look. I thanked him and he left. I felt deeply uneasy. I tried to find the courage to go outside and see what was happening, but only 5 minutes after I sat down to eat, there was a knock at the door. I jumped up from the couch, my heart pounding. I stared at the door for a minute before slowly walking over, trying to be quiet. When I peeked out, no one was there. The car was still outside. I took a deep breath and opened the door. I stepped outside. It was dark and silent. I looked along the side of the porch, but saw no one. So I walked down the driveway toward the car. When I peered through the window, whoever had been inside was gone. A cold feeling washed over me. I went to the back of the car to check the license plate, only to find it had none. That made me even more frightened. It suggested this person had planned things out. I moved away from the car to go back inside, feeling truly uneasy, and thinking it was definitely time to call the police. I stepped inside and closed the door, but immediately a strange sensation came over me. The house was silent, yet my senses picked up that something was wrong. I crept to the living room and looked at the couch. My phone was gone. Every part of me tightened with fear. Before I could even stir, I heard the slow creak of a door hinge. Then quiet footsteps moved down the hallway toward the front door.
but they stopped just before turning the corner. They were waiting, right around that corner by the front door. I couldn't just bolt. I froze for a few moments, then began to very carefully and quietly move toward the other side of the house. No matter what path I took, I'd have to go past the hallway where I knew the man was. So whatever I did, I knew I had to be quick. I paused for a second. The fear of what I was about to do took over briefly, but then I got a grip and made a mad dash for the back door. I unlocked it and ran out of the house. Just as I stepped outside, I heard the man behind me call my name. Not just my first name, but my full name. It startled and shocked me enough to make me turn and look. The man was rushing toward the back door, and I could see most of his face, but I didn't recognize him at all. I turned back and kept running. The area behind my house was just a flat part of the neighborhood. There weren't really any places to hide. I could still hear the man chasing me. I kept going, past the next row of houses, and decided to run down the sidewalk, hoping a car or someone would come by to help. But after a few minutes, I looked back and he was gone. It took a long time to find someone willing to help me call the police. By then the man was nowhere to be found. He had taken his car and escaped. He was smarter than I thought too, because when I immediately tried to track my phone, he had thrown it into my front yard before leaving, so we couldn't trace him. If this had just been a normal break-in or theft, I'd be much less shaken. But clearly it was more than that. This was a stalker. He knew my full name, and probably much more about me. There's no telling how long he'd been watching me or what he intended to do. It's only been a few days, but I'm already planning to move far away. I can't live knowing that person still knows where I am. If anything new happens in the next few weeks, I'll try to share it.